From Raleigh, North Carolina, it's Westworld with Jay, Jack, and Mike, a podcast dedicated to HBO's Westworld. This week we will analyze, discuss, theorize, and recap episode 2.9, Vanishing Point. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Everybody, welcome to Westworld with Jay, Jack, and Mike. My name is Jay.
My name is Mike.
And I'm Cha-ching.
And welcome to the show. How's it going, gentlemen? Cha-ching.
Excellent.
What did I miss?
Well, that sound effect represents the fact that Jack is making completely fictional amounts of money on one of his theories once again being correct.
No, well, that you might think that's what happened, but no, that's the sound the listeners make every time they're watching Westworld, and one of my theories happens.
Didn't we say this was a prediction? I guess not even really a theory. What was this? What was it? He was going to kill his daughter? Was that the...
No.
What was your theory?
No, that Teddy would kill himself.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I mean, you can try and downgrade it all you want. You can call it whatever you want, Jay. It's just...
No, it's fine. It's fine.
No, it's all right. It's all right, because I know you have to beg for your things, but it's okay. It just... Mine actually happened in black and white. You can see it, and you go, oh, yes, Teddy killed himself. It's not one of those things where, do I get something for this? Because, that's okay. I don't care because the listeners are happy, and that's why they go, cha-ching.
Well, see, you were gloating in our Westworld chat.
Was I gloating?
Was I gloating?
Yeah, you were kind of gloating.
Yeah,
Was I gloating? I didn't want to. Well, I was kind of vague about it because I didn't want people to get spoiled. But
I mean, I would say you were acting more like William inside of Westworld than William outside of Westworld.
It could have been, but I was like, if and like I said, I didn't want to see it happen, but.
Well, Jack and Ed Harris do share similar features. But
I also wish happy belated Father's Day to you both. You hopefully had better days with your children than some of these characters did.
Yeah.
Well, I
didn't kill any of them. So.
Well, yeah, one, I'm thankful Jack has never killed me in some weird disorienting trip. I don't know.
Oh, you know what? And I've thought about it. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, luckily, he never had like a semi-automatic, like futuristic machine gun to fire at me. But
well, I've never fired a gun, so
we had a nice Father's Day barbecue at my house, and so right after that, we went to watch Westworld. And as it starts, like, oh, it's going to be this nice redeeming story for Father's Day. Nope, not even close. That kind of
as beautiful as the episode before was, and just the scenery and everything was just, oh, this is heartwarming. This was rip your heart out.
This was brutal. I'm gonna say something that might be controversial, whatever. But I hated this episode the first time I watched it. I did not like it at all. I didn't. I was like, and again, it might have just been my Father's Day mindset of what I wanted. I wanted this Bill kind of redemption story, and the whole Teddy thing. I was like, oh, now he is getting like so. All this stuff. I was like, what in the world is going on? But on the second viewing, I enjoyed it much more.
I enjoyed it I was like you up until the part where Teddy kills himself.
So the first 55 minutes
yeah,
of the
I was just
episode, basically.
I said, this is terrible. This is just depressing. Oh, Teddy killed himself.
Well,
yes!
I think that part of it comes down to, I think the three of us have vocalized this in previous podcasts. I think we were expecting, to your point, Jay, some redemption from the Man in Black, or at least some more colorization, of his character to really see what's going on with him. But that color is just black and darkness. And so it is very intriguing, but simultaneously depressing to find out that, there might be some more complications there in his personality. We'll talk about that. But for the most part, it's not like he has, a good sign necessarily. He monologues in both the beginning and end of this episode about how, he might have a facade of graciousness and niceties to him, but underneath is just complete depravity.
Yeah, and there's this sense of like especially on the second viewing, the sense that is he a host, all that kind of stuff kind of plays really heavy because there's the Juliet saying, "Is this real? Are you real?" And it closed out his story in this episode with that quote from Juliet. While he's digging a knife into his forearm after he kind of been playing with it at his dinner party or looking at it. So whether or not it's the showrunner is just trying to F with the viewers or it is a real thing, there is a sense of reality distortion for Bill right now, whether that's real or perceived by him.
I mean, what I really enjoyed, especially from this second time watching, is just reconciling with the fact that this character is legitimately insane.
Yeah.
And I think that, we've spoken towards, he has these hyper-violent tendencies. He has anger management issues. He craves power. He craves Dolores, et cetera, et cetera. But I think, Emily's conversation with him really just puts it all out there that he has gone off the deep end. He is questioned the nature of his reality so much, his paranoia has gotten the best of him, and it culminates in the death of the only family member that would want to reach out to him at this point. So it is, I guess it's ironically beautiful in that regard, but it is gut-wrenching to know at the same time, just watching this man fall basically, out of any sense of what is real and, coming into his own as someone who truly is, for lack of a better term, insane.
Yep, exactly.
Well, that's why I don't think he is a host. I think he wants to believe that he's a host so he can defend his actions.
Yeah, or that, whatever he did, it wasn't actually real, or it's all Ford's game, et cetera, et cetera,
right.
et cetera.
Something like that. But I like the fact that he didn't. I know you were hoping for redemption. I'm glad because there are bad people in the world. They're just people that do bad things, and I'm kind of not I don't root for the bad guy or anything like that, but I like the fact that they're staying true to his character,
which I'm fine with. I'm fine with that. And season 1, it makes sense. He's the bad guy. I like it, But this season, they're kind of playing at kind of an Unforgiven-y type redemption story, whatever his journey is, especially with the whole Lawrence Village and blah, 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 which, if you put it in a certain view or a certain lens, you could say he's just trying to get further in the game. He's just playing things like he always plays, plays different angles just to get further along instead of actually being a real human being. And that could just be the psych out that the showrunners are doing. And then, consider me fooled. But to me, if I have a criticism of the season is who are we rooting for? To me, it's really only Maeve and Aki in the Ghost Nation, and they just got decimated in this episode too. So who am I rooting for? Am I supposed to be rooting for anybody?
Lee Sizemore.
I mean, he's the heel of the season, going from villain to hero. I would make an argument for Bernard, and we're gonna be talking a bit more about Bernard this episode, in that he really just does feel like a victim the entire time, especially this episode. I have a hot take that I'll put out there. I don't know if I'll put it out here now or later on in the episode, because it doesn't deal with the Man in Black storyline. But I will say the Man in Black storyline was not my least favorite part of the episode, especially on a rewatch. I think it was an interesting character study to see how far this guy has fallen. Yeah, no,
it's not that I didn't like it. I was just, again, I liked it a lot better the second time around. The episode completely changed from it. First watching it last night, I was like, oh man. When it starts out, you kind of think, okay, that's where the direction they're going to go, because they have that guy putting him down because he's not he didn't grow up with money and stuff like that, and you think, okay, they're going to make him, and he's got his wife that's maybe why he doesn't drink, because his wife drinks a lot and someone has to be sober, so maybe that's
Except for when he goes to the bar and sneaks away some alcohol.
Actually, I'm drinking a Macallan in his honor. Not that I normally drink a Macallan every time we podcast, but no, it's actually because of...
So you're drinking in the bad guy's honor.
Bill.
Okay, all right, there you go.
But anyway, excited to talk about this episode, dig into it, because I think there's a lot here to dissect, especially with maybe where the show's going to go. It's the second to last episode. The finale is next week, and that's it. So exciting stuff, and excited to see how it plays out. I feel like they've left a lot for the finale, so it'll be interesting to see how it all comes together. or if it all comes together. But before we get into any of that, I want to thank people that make the show possible. Our patrons over at patreon.com/Jay and Jack. All of the podcasts on the Jay and Jack Network are listener supported.
Cha-ching.
I'm offended, Jack. I'm offended. All right. Without any further ado, let's jump into this recap, gentlemen. What do you say?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So we start with a Billy cap, as I'm calling it, of the dead wife bathtub scene and a future kind of attempted suicide. And then we go to Bill at a swank party toasting to his legacy. He has a monologue around the speck of darkness inside him, but his wife Juliet saw right through it. He questions if this is real as he wakes up to his daughter Emily giving him aid in Westworld. Emily has taken him to a rally point, sent Flair for help. He needs to get to a hospital. Emily tells the story of the ballerina box. She feels regret for pushing her mother away, but it's not too late for us. Anybody get a feel, or I don't know any big Nolan fans out there, but the shots of the ballerina box was very Chris Nolan-y.
Oh, yeah. I was waiting for that ballerina to turn and fall over.
Yeah.
And we realized that's in the virtual reality the entire time. Before we get too much into the flashback and the main storyline, can I talk for a second about the title of this episode, Vanishing Point?
Absolutely.
Because I read an interview on HBO.com with Robert Patino, who is the writer for this episode, and Vanishing Point is an art term that refers to, when you draw perspective drawings, there is one central point that all sort of your lines converge onto. And so the term can represent, that we have this idea of the Forge, which is officially named now, and all these characters are sort of in there. It's a mad world style heading there, which will eventually come to a head, hopefully in the next episode. But it also might refer to a literal vanishing point in that, as we mentioned before, the Man in Black, his sense of what world is what is really vanishing. And so there's the point in which those two sort of intersect has now completely taken over his mind frame, and now everything just sort of muddles together as one big world. So I thought it was just an interesting. We're always looking to the title of these things. They reference music, they reference art, they reference random pieces of pop culture, phrases of different languages. So I thought it was an interesting way to title, especially like you said, Jay, because we are reaching this converging point where all the characters are at least inching forward to that final destination. It's an interesting title for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, when I was watching this scene, I was like, "Oh, Emily killed her mom." I was, of course, it doesn't happen at the end, but that was my first thought, that she killed her mom before this scene. But
can we talk about the jerks at Bill's black tie event, and also Mr. Black Hat loves a black tie event?
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, he looks good in a suit.
Yeah, well, he was rocking the tux at the gala too, so it's clearly like his item of choice. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like Plutarch and Plotius or whatever Ford as being thrown around here. But Plutarch is the one who this guy incorrectly coins with, Alexander, when he conquered everything, he wept for there were no more worlds to conquer. But really the quote is, I believe that, he actually doesn't cry. He said, "It is not worthy of tears that when the number of worlds is infinite, we have not yet become lords of a single one." So it's basically the opposite, that, they're coming with this more imperialist view of like, hey, we've taken everything over, now what? But the actual quote is more so like, there is so much out there. You could be a jack of all trades, master of none. And that is an interesting focus around Bill, who I wouldn't say is necessarily wanting to conquer the park, but he wants to conquer the game. And if we're going back to this idea of this is not the right world that I'm in, and what Aki was saying about how, this is the wrong world, it connects interestingly to this idea of, Alexander the Great and trying to deal with multiple worlds and how to rule them.
Yep. Yeah, and it's one of those, off-used quotes, but I like that they kind of went to the correct one, because the WEP for there are no more worlds to conquer is the one that's, if that is incorrect, used a lot.
I think Hans Gruber uses it, actually.
Yeah, I think you're right. The greatest action movie of all time, and greatest Christmas movie of all time. Some argue. I'm not going to get into that four-way, but yeah. And to Jack's point about just everybody's kind of jerks, but it's just rich people, right? They're all jerks, right? That's just how.
That's how I'm that way. I'm a jerk.
I mean, that's how the Hollywood stereotypes search people.
Yeah.
So what do we assume? Because we don't know too much again about what William does, but I guess he's some sort of philanthropist. I think there was like one review that compared him to like a John D. Rockefeller type. But do we know exactly who these people are in relation to him? They say, everybody's here for you, which reverberates really nicely when Emily says later, like, you think everyone in this park is here for you. I guess it's something that he was sort of like, raised to believe or was led to believe over the course of his professional career. But did we get any specifications as to what exactly he does and why he's being celebrated so much?
To me, I kind of just assume it's like that, Andrew Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller, Titan that, took over entire industries, whatever, and then, the later half of his life with all this money, does all these great philanthropic works, whether that's to cover up maybe his less than ideal business past, or it's truly from a place of, good, is up to interpretation. But I think they're just leaving that vague because then you can kind of easily picture the Carnegies or the Vanderbilts or the Rockefellers of it all. But that's how I kind of take it from what this whole thing is, the people that are there, all that kind of stuff. If you're that socially connected, there's kind of a lot of people come and they don't really matter in the scheme of things. That's just me. Jack, what do you think?
Well, as far as the guest or himself, or the guest, of course, they're just there to kiss. They're chasing they always they want to stay with the money, right? That's why you go to these things. Let's go get this guy an award because you don't want to upset the money. But like I said, what he's doing, he looks like to me like the wife does it to go there to drink. She doesn't have anything to. I mean, seriously, what is she? She goes to these things to drink and socialize, I guess. And William goes there too.
I think she drinks to kind of probably,
she
deal with her horrible reality. Yeah.
Well, I get that, but I'm just saying that's probably why she goes to these things. And I like, what is he doing? I don't know. I mean, he just looked at the guy that he kind of just looked at he just has that blank stare. Like when the guy was insulting him, he didn't really get mad. He just kind of looked at him, And that's when his wife came over and she did the correct quote, right? Or she gave the quote.
Well, she gave another quote that was, let me see, it was, I would rather excel in the knowledge of what is excellent than the extent of my power and possessions. Which basically says, I'd rather be better at knowing that good things than be better at expanding my empire. So she sort of, I guess, again, takes like the anti-imperialist view of it of, hey, you know what, I could conquer things or I could know what's good, which again goes back to this question of morality. The Juliet role is so interesting, especially when you rewatch. And, I guess I would compare her. I'll take like the black tie-esque role right now and compare her to a figure in Greek mythology, the myth character of Cassandra, who is like this prophet who, predicted all these horrible things would happen in the Trojan War, and everyone just wrote her off as crazy and didn't even listen to her. But it turned out that she was completely true the entire time, but nobody would listen. And I definitely got, especially watching this the second time around, we're definitely led to be believed that, Juliet is a wreck. She's drinking, she's fallen off the wagon, she's, causing a scene, she's slapping her husband. But when you rewatch things, you realize, to the point that we made before, that, she is someone who is like furtively screaming into the darkness that someone who comes off as the best man in the world is really a horrible, horrible person. And nobody, including her own daughter, is listening, which is tragic.
Well, and then you see why someone would go mad in that situation.
Well, she also says, she said a couple of times, my dad would be proud of you.
But she probably doesn't hold her dad in very high esteem either, because he was.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. She probably, Logan had, Logan, was mistreated and had, became a heroin addict. It's probably because the upbringing from the dad, and she basically probably married her dad.
Or I think she's frustrated with is she thought she was not marrying her. She thought she was marrying one person that wasn't.
Yep.
Well, because we all thought that when that was my thing.
When we saw William, we thought he was the good guy, right? And
that's why it was so hard for me when everyone was going. It was William. I go, there is no way William would treat Dolores that way. There's no way. But there was a darker side to him, and he is a bad guy.
Yeah, it's interesting because I guess if you compare because again, Juliet was engaged to William before William, but back when he was, before he even entered the park. And so that really is like the nebbishy corporate ladder climbing William who entered Westworld season 1, episode 2. So if you think about like knowing that guy, and like you said, Jay, she's going to have this monologue later where she says, I'm used to, spending all my time around these fake guys and stuffy ties. And I thought you were the one person who wouldn't be that, but it turns out that you're the only person who can be that. So I think, again, if you watch the episode the second time around, I highly encourage you all out there to watch it from Juliet's perspective. Since, again, this is the first and really only episode we're going to get from her point of view. I feel like it's fascinating.
Well, be careful, because we've said several times this is the last time we're getting Logan's point of view, and I think we're still not done yet on Logan's contributions to it.
Well, I think they left the door open for one of my other theories to be correct, but that's I don't want to break. I don't want to. I'll wait till. I don't want to say cha-ching yet. We'll just wait to see if it happens.
I think that's a really good point to make, Mike, because her lines seem to really drive the narrative of this story in this episode. And yeah, I think those are great call-outs for kind of the tragedy of Juliet.
Yes, she did not have a Romeo, but she still died.
We then go to Dolores and the Ghost Nation face-off. The Ghost Nation arrives in Dolores' path and tells her that she is not meant to get to the door. Dolores shares her manifesto, and when the Ghost Nation tells her that she leaves them she leaves them no choice but to stop them. She has Teddy begin to shoot them all down. A fight ensues. Dolores plays out the scene we saw in episode 1. Not all of us deserve to make it to the Valley Beyond. All that's left is her and Teddy. She asks Teddy to see if there's anyone left. He finds the Ghost Nation second in command and he lets him go. So, I guess this changed Teddy still is conflicted with what it is, even with the programming changes that he's had. One thing that I got out of this, or at least something, a different perspective, because the Ghost Nation member told her, you don't deserve to go beyond or to make it there, to go to the other world. And then her line, not all of us deserve to make it to the Valley Beyond. The first time I thought was she was just killing him because he doesn't deserve to make it. But maybe she is saying, a la Moses, that she actually isn't going to go beyond the valley. She's just going to try and fulfill whatever her mission is when she gets to the Valley Beyond.
Yeah, let my robots go. Yeah, I think that's her plan, right? Is to not necessarily, because Aki, said that his MO is, okay, let me open the door so everyone can get out. I think Dolores' idea is let me blow up the door so that, I'm going to get revenge on these people. That's the sort of correction that she makes when the Ghost Nation person says the Valley Beyond is not meant for you. She says, no, it's meant for the people who built this place, and I'm going to use it as a tool. And before, remember, she referred to it as a weapon. So
right.
It's not an opportunity for her. It's more so something she can utilize against others.
Yeah.
Now, was she in the wrong? Because they were trying to stop her from doing what she wanted to do. So it wasn't like it was just flat out murder. I mean, it was you're trying to prevent me from going forward. I mean, I'm just saying it. Just she had the Teddy machine there.
But does it symbolize a core break, or at least a different stratagem in Dolores's bank? Because again, we expected her to be the crusader for all hosts, but as we found out over the course of season 2, and yes, she killed Craddock, but then he came back. But otherwise, I feel like the people that she's really been going against have been the humans. So this is the first time I can really remember where she, to your point, Jack, has sort of had to gun down a bunch of hosts to get what she wants.
Right. I mean, they were in her way. So I'm gonna give Dolores a little slack on this one.
Well, also, I mean, the Ghost Nation people, what are they doing bringing bows and arrows into a gunfight? Also, who are those people holding that big log? Were those just more of like the Ghost Nation prisoners that they brought with them?
I thought it was the prisoner. Yeah.
Well, sorry, guess you. I'm pretty sure it was only Dolores, Teddy, and that guy who ended up getting out of that mess.
Yeah, don't bring a log to that fight either. So it's not.
They could have just ran it into the horse or something.
I guess, yeah.
Oh man. We then go to Bernard, Roland, Hale, and Pennyfeather, Clementine. Roland has been able to take what Maeve has used to make the others do what she tells them telepathically and use to control Pennyfeather do the same to their needs. She kind of has this room full of hosts all kill each other. Hale says if this works, we won't need Maeve anymore. Ford tells Bernard that there is one more thing he needs to do before they go back to Elsie.
Is Bernard like the stealthiest character on this show? My wife pointed this out when we were watching this last night. Like, there's a certain degree of, plausible explanation that I'll give to fiction, but considering how covert this guy is, like, he should be the next Solid Snake because he's just hanging out there observing. Remember that, like, they know he's a host, so theoretically, if they find him, he's like public enemy number one.
Wait, do they know he's a host yet? Because I feel like that's in the 2 weeks later storyline. We're not there yet.
Oh, right, you're right about that. Oh wait, no, but that was. Oh, yeah, I guess now I'm confused about the timeline. Yeah, because Dolores infiltrated the Mesa before the 2 weeks later thing happened. So you're right. Maybe they were just like, oh, hey, Bernard, come skulk in the back while we watch Clementine become her own. Are we calling this like Clementine 3.0, 4.0 at this point?
I think this is 3.0.
She looked less zombie-ish.
No, she's still pretty zombie. She's like big old, like tiger claw marks on her like chest and everything. She's even more zombified, I think.
What did you guys think about the constant use of hands up against the glass? Between, like, Clem here, we get Bernard doing it soon with Maeve. It's, like, a very interesting sort of, I don't know, I wouldn't call it a reverie, but, like, a constant motion that they do to connect with other hosts. Just put your hand up against the glass. You don't need to do it back and say live long and prosper or write anything on your hand. But I think it was an interesting symbol to see across both those scenes.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, if we have another Lost connection, you could put one there. But I think it's just maybe, yeah.
I guess it's cool unless you're the person responsible for cleaning the glass. Like, come on, man.
You had too many handprints on this every damn day.
Yeah, I just cleaned it. I just cleaned the glass. I saw this yesterday at Jay's house.
Yeah. Clean those glass windows, and Zach just puts his hands all over them. It's the worst.
I said, where did Zach get that from?
Well, if there was a parody of this season, there could be one where it's kind of Office style, where the camera, like single camera, kind of pans back, and they're looking like, who's that? It's like, Bernard, what are you doing just standing there? What's going on? and he's like, oh, sorry. Or the cleaning crew. So like, God, what's all these damn fingerprints?
I think that's the least of their concerns.
Yeah, exactly.
Their bigger concern is, why are there all these dead bodies and broken glass and blood everywhere?
What if it's like
your job is to clean the glass? That's
well. What if it's like they randomly show up over the weekend because they only come on the weekends to clean? It's like, what the hell happened here?
You could have the maid from Ghostbusters say it.
Yeah. What the hell are you?
What the hell are you doing?
That was a real response, by the way. Did you know that?
I did.
So the explosives that they had in there were a bigger charge than she was expecting. So when her cart blew up, she was actually really pissed. It wasn't like her acting that she was pissed.
That's how you get great acting.
Yes.
That's how you get actors to just be real.
Anyways, so we then go to Bill and Emily. Bill's still questioning how she found him. She tells him she knows about his little project. She says it has to do with control, to which he replies it has nothing to do with control. And we flash to the dinner party. Bill runs into his daughter, who says she should take her mom home. But he says he'll handle it. Asks her to come back to his house for a nightcap. He goes to a bar and says, F it. Let's have McAllen straight. Ford is at the bar and tells him he is there to pay his respects, which Bill scoffs at. Ford mentions his project, and Bill reminds him that Ford stays out of Delos and will stay out of his stories. Ford asks him when was the last time he visited his creation. He slides him some profile card, and says it won't be the most flattering portrait. Bill, seeing his inebriated wife, leaves, telling him no more games, Ford. Ford says as he walks away, no, William, perhaps one final game. On second viewing here, I definitely got much more of a sense that is Emily really Emily, or is this really like a sadistic game that Ford is still all part of the game for Ford. It hit me a lot harder the second time viewing it than the first time viewing it. What do you guys think?
Is that what you're making of like the one final game line? Which I'll say, we called out all the action movie cheesiness a couple weeks ago. The trope of like someone walks away and you say to nobody in particular, like one final capper on the scene. It feels like a little on the nose, personally.
It is. It is.
I did think that the whole time I was watching, I thought William was younger when his wife committed suicide. I just had that impression that she was young. He was younger.
It was a good assumption to make because he doesn't say how long ago it was. This seems. I mean, unless Ed Harris is just like very ageless, this all seems to occur within
once
like
he looks old. Like once he gets
old, exactly.
But
like it all seems to occur over the course of like a few years between him visiting Delos for the final time and leaving him there, and then all the stuff that happens in the park that then leads to everything that we see play out in the the middle timeline. If we're judging again by, the way Harris looks, it only happens over the course of a few years. So whole lot of trauma for this man recently.
Yeah. Well, that could have been the what do they call the when something sets someone off, it's I'm drawing a blank on the term, but anyway. A trigger. It's a trigger. It triggered him to go on the deep end, but
well, I mean, yeah, possibly. But so do we, to Ford's thing, maybe one last final game, is that just a throwaway line? Is it just an action flick line? Or is it like legit?
Well, you can see that they don't like each other.
True.
Well, do we think that the game is the door? Because this is when, remember in the beginning of the season, little Ford says, this game is meant for you. So I wonder Ford, if we're talking about, like, does Ford have this much omnipotence that he knows exactly what's going to happen? That could arguably be it. Another Lost reference, William calls Ford the Wizard of Oz, which, of course, is also known as the man behind the curtain.
Yep, exactly. And, it's an easy comparison to make or a fun quip to make towards him. But if it is a game, like, is there still redemption? Well, I don't know. But because maybe Emily is a Ford bot, just trying to play him. Who knows? I don't know. I'm just hoping he didn't kill his daughter. I'm still hoping. I was like, why did you do that? Why?
I don't know. Well, we'll talk about it. I find that I think it would be a cop-out, personally, if Emily was a host. I love the actress, and I think the character is interesting, but we'll talk about it. I think the emotional effectiveness would get a bit erased if it turns out that she was a host the entire time.
Yeah, I agree.
But I will say I love her as well, but her hat just doesn't fit right. It kind of looks...
Well, I mean, it has a bit of gear in it, so no wonder it doesn't necessarily fit correctly.
We then go to Bernard, Ford, and Maeve.
That's a perfect name, though. I mean, we only got the Bernard Ford mashup in like 1.5 episodes, but I think that's a perfect way to ship them together.
Bernard.
There you go.
And Maeve, Bernard tries to get into Maeve's room, but doesn't have access. Ford tells him he's close enough for her to connect to his mind and get the message Ford has for her. We then go to Bernard, Ford, and Elsie. He finally gets to Elsie. She asks for the truth. Ford tells him he can't trust her, but he tells her that they weren't just trying to resurrect Jim Delos, but they were taking cognition from every guest like the cradle-only beggar. It's called the Forge, and they need to beat the host there and use it as leverage to end all of this. So there you go. There's where they're running to their sunset to solve the problem.
What did you guys think of the name, The Forge? Again, going back to Lost,
Valley Forge.
The blank is always a great, Dharma station naming device. But the use of the name, The Forge, you brought up Valley Forge,
Yep.
Jay. I mean, a forge is also like where you melt metals in order to build something out of them. So I think it's an interesting thing to call it.
Yep. Yeah, I mean... Yeah, I think there's a few different things you take there, especially with the whole Valley Beyond, and then connecting it to Valley Forge, and that historical context, and then among all other things, and it just sounds cool. Like it works for me on a nomenclature standpoint. Like it's cool. I can go. With
I'm just wondering if because the Forge for me implies that they're building something. The question is if it's just a facility to house. I guess if they're building this immortality project, I guess that's what it is. But it just sounds like a weird name to give what seems like a storage facility.
Yeah. But again, they could be forging immortality or forging heaven or
forging ahead.
Forge ahead,
or forging a signature.
Oh yeah, that's true. Actually, forging like an identity.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that. That's a good call.
Like it's a forge, so it's not real, right? Yep. So this whole Westworld is not real.
Oh no!
Oh, there we go. God. There we go.
Checks in the mail.
I think some people said. Just heard some listeners go cha-ching.
We then go back to Bill and Emily. Emily wants in, doesn't understand how they get all the cognitive information. We can bring back Mom. Bill reveals that they track guest brain movements through their hats. Bill thinks she wants to bring her mom back, but Emily wants to know why she did it. So how about that reveal that the hats are how they get all this information?
Yeah, nice.
I mean, it'll be interesting to watch back now the scene from the second episode where Angela guides William through like the whole white hat, black hat thing. And it speaks toward this larger idea of, it doesn't matter what you choose. It's all going to come out gray in the wash. Though it does also bring up the question of like, do you have to wear a hat in something like Shogun World or the Raj? Are there other pieces of clothing that track that stuff? Because
I'm sure there's other pieces of clothing. There's probably something that they're like the sword or something they're touching that has it on there.
Yeah, because with the hat, at least you get like the direct, cranial scan. It would be weird to like do it with another piece of clothing, but it makes sense, Jack, that like they wouldn't. I mean, we don't know if they're making copies of people in the other worlds, but we know that specifically in Westworld, it's through those much beloved hats.
They don't wear hats all the time, right? So there's going to be moments where they're not gaining information, I would guess. Like what if you lose your hat? Like, can you not play the game?
Yeah, like, no thanks, I don't like hats.
It messes with my hair.
I get terrible hat hair. I'm good.
But when Emily said she wanted in. I thought like Bill. I go, oh, she's a host. Because why would she want it? That's where I was leaning that she was a host.
Yeah.
Because it didn't make sense. I want in. I want to be this. I want to be that. But then you go through the flashbacks where she was closer to her dad than she was the mom. So I don't know.
Well, let's remember though that she says later on, I'm not a host pretending to be a human. I'm a daughter pretending to love her father. So I wonder if that's like, because I feel like there's a really interesting interview with Katja Herbers on the Hollywood Reporter with Josh Wegler this week, where she talks about just the various tactics that Emily tries to just try to pull her father back from the edge. And I feel like this is one of those tactics personally. Maybe I'm hopelessly still in the camp that she's a human, but I would think that if she was a human, this would be something she would want to try. All the other times that she's tried something, he's abandoned her. Now she wants to say like, okay, fine. If I can't pull you away, I'll just come with you, and hopefully then I can guide you away at some point.
I thought she was a host up until he shot her, and then I said, okay, that was his. Cause it just like you said earlier, Mike. The scene would be cheapened if it turns out to be just a host, right? I mean, yeah. I just the way I said, oh wait, maybe it was it. Well, I guess we'll find out. But I'm hoping it was her. I know Jay's not, but I'm hoping it was his daughter.
Maybe the young father in me just doesn't want that to be the case. But
but then she'll leave handprints all over the glass. It's it's preventative.
And he's got to pay people to clean the glass too. So it's a pain.
He can afford it. I feel like he's one of those people that could afford it.
Yeah, but you got to cut back. It's budget cuts. They've suffered a lot. They've suffered a lot of losses in the last couple weeks. So with the host going crazy,
they lost like 80% of their board.
Exactly. Who's going to insure the park now? Nobody.
Yes, that is a
No, there's going to be like a host insurance agent that they're going to create to come in and forge. They'll come out of the forge. They'll forge insurance.
It'll be a gecko host, right?
Oh man. Yes. Anyway, back to the night of the party. Back at Bill's home, Juliet confronts him on his two-faced life. I thought you were different, but you infected our whole family. Emily sees her mother fighting with her dad. She confronts mother, saying she needs to go back to rehab. She begs not to go back and tells Emily your father doesn't love you. She doesn't love you. When she's putting Bill's putting her to bed, she says, "This isn't real. Are you real? Did you ever love me? If you keep pretending, you're not going to remember who you are." He puts her to bed, puts his profile card in one of the books on the table. So we kind of
rookie mistake.
Yeah, like, why would you put it there?
She doesn't read. She only quotes Plutarch. She can't possibly.
Well, I was thinking too. She probably saw him do it too.
Yeah. Well, why?
It's interesting though, because I mean, we can talk about like Juliet sobers up real quick once like the reveal happens.
Hold on, but maybe this was a long con on her part. Maybe it was a long con.
Yeah,
maybe she was.
Or maybe it was it. Maybe Bill wanted her to find the card.
Maybe.
I will also say, fantastic acting from Celia Ward. Emmy winner Celia Ward this episode as older Juliet. Of course, we got like that random stock photo model ended up being the young Juliet. So it was cool to see her as the older Juliet. Did you guys notice a fun Easter egg? The name of the psychiatrist that Emily was on the phone with before the scene?
Woodward.
Dr. Woodward.
Oh.
And which actor in Westworld has the last name Woodward?
Elsie.
Yeah.
What?
I didn't know. There's no connection, probably. I don't know if it's a complete coincidence. I just thought it was fun that they used the last name of one of the characters. But also interesting as well. Again, we are not dealing with hosts, quite possibly, but the idea of, okay, we're going to put Juliet back in rehab sounds very loopish. Okay, we're just going to keep doing the same thing over and over again and see if different results come out. They're almost testing her in that regard.
Well, it's really harsh, too, just to put her in rehab. Like, I mean, I guess if you're kind of frustrated or whatever, but still.
And again, if you take it from Juliet's perspective, where Juliet says, they treat me like a prisoner, and Emily counters with they treat you like an addict, which is what you are. Like, it really cuts once you find out that Juliet is kind of in the right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Again, and I think you made the point earlier in this episode, like, looking at it from Juliet's perspective, it's a really sad story because she's not crazy. There is nothing, sick inside of her like Emily thinks. It's all William infecting his family, and ruining them essentially.
Yeah, I agree.
Which is sad, very sad.
This is a guy you want redemption. To have redemption.
Not after this episode, no, absolutely. But I'm saying before this, so we're kind of feeling like that would be the case, maybe.
Okay.
Back to Westworld, Ford says, not Ford, I'm sorry. Bill says she was drunk and upset. It's not your fault. Emily says she was that way most nights. She wants to know the missing piece of the puzzle on why she killed herself. Back to the night of the party. Emily just got the phone with the rehab doctor. She doesn't want to do this, but there's something wrong inside of her. It's the right thing to do. Water drips from the chandelier. Bill runs up to find his wife dead in their tub. Back to Go ahead.
A lot of connection with water,
yes.
Which is interesting. Like between obviously the water dripping from the chandelier, the water overflowing with the tub. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but we begin the episode with Emily telling Dad drink, and then we have William doing the same thing to his wife when he puts her to bed. And obviously we have, the flooding that's eventually going to happen probably next episode of The Valley Beyond. So I don't know if there's any larger significance to water, but I feel like water is at least a recurring motif, especially in this episode.
Yeah, well, I think that's a Nolan thing, right? He has this whole fear of drowning. There's just water is a big theme in the Nolan verse. So
he needs to learn how to swim.
Yeah, or the floaties.
Hold his breath.
Yeah.
Back to Westworld. Bill gets up and asks, "Why the hell are we going over this?" Emma says, "I want the truth." He replies with an "F you."
You can't handle the truth,
isn't it? This is here to distract me and throw me off my course. Emily says, "Do you want the truth? I'm not a host pretending to be your daughter. I'm your daughter pretending to give a ish about you." Bill thinks this is a forward play. QA shows up. He says he is going to see this through, guns the QA down, then turns the gun on Emily. She tries to show him why she's real, but before she can pull out the profile card, he guns her down. Yeah. Thinking he thwarted Ford, he goes to check her arm, and he finds his profile card in her hand. Bill looks in horror at what he has done. Just,
my bad.
Really horribly intense scene.
Well, first, can we say that these are the worst QA people yet? They're probably the fourth stringers at this point, but seriously, you have all guns pointed on this one man, and he's able to kill all of you without you guys even letting out a single shot. And this guy's been shot 4 times already. It's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, well, maybe they had orders not to shoot him.
Because he's the boss?
Because he's the boss. I mean, don't shoot him, okay? Just scare him a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It
didn't work.
I mean, it was. I guess it was like a symbol of him truly going over the edge, which again leads to him shooting Emily, which I thought was just. I mean, I thought when she pulled something out and he shot her, I felt like maybe to your point, Jack, that she was not a host because it's going to be this thing where this is going to be this horror-stricken reveal. I thought it was maybe going to be like a picture of them as a family or something that only they knew about, but it's the profile card. And yeah, this is, I feel like maybe the first ever time we see Ed Harris with like a look of shock or slight sadness on his face. And I feel like that's very indicative. And again, that's why I really hope that Emily isn't a host, because I feel like that almost underwrites it. And it might also underwrite the Raj stuff as well, where, you know, we see her try to escape all this stuff. I don't know. I feel like it'd be viewed that beginning of episode 3 would be viewed in a different light if we knew that she was just a host escaping other hosts.
No, I mean, I think that's a fair ask. To me, it's sad that that's her into her story, and you know, and seemingly William Bill Man in Black has gotten shot like 7,000 times, and is alive every single time, but she gets like 3 bullets to the chest, and she's done.
Well, Bill shoots to kill.
I guess so.
As Jack is a big Leftovers fan, do you like an FU Ford to end the scene?
Oh, yeah. That's great.
We get an FU Bernard.
FU Lori.
And we get FU Bernard later on as well. So I feel like we're finishing off a trifecta here on HBO.
You got to have those FU to people. I mean, it's just a perfect phrase.
But it's so sad at the same time, because again, if we're going along the assumption that he shot his daughter in cold blood, and he has a momentary, you know, he has like a momentary pause, and then he says "F you" for, as if to say like, yeah, I'm right, I mastered this game, only to find out that he didn't. It's just like Jay said, there's a lot of emotion packed into this one scene, especially the confrontation as well that begins it, where, you know, you want the truth, as Jack said, you can't handle the truth, and maybe he couldn't because he shot her.
Yeah. Well, that's why I say they show a scene where they cut away where he's digging into his arm. The only way he's trying to justify that maybe he's a host, that he's not this bad guy that maybe he was created. You mean, like you said it earlier, that he's gone off the deep end, that he's lost it. Mm-hmm. And so that's, maybe he wasn't always a bad guy. He just became a bad guy around bad people.
Well, I also wonder if Emily's words to him, "you are in your very essence a lie," play with it as well. Again, going back to this idea of a forge, that he's like a forgery of a person, that he's, you know, a demon wearing a man's clothing. I feel like those words might have really cut to him, that caused him to cut into himself.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep, exactly. Well, big scene, great Father's Day episode. And we go to Maeve, Roland, and Ford. Roland is going to prepare to end Maeve, since they have this Pennyweather solution. We have Ford quotes, as only Ford can do, "Mankind is poised midway between the gods and the beasts." Closer to the beast now. He says, "My poor girl, what have they done to you, Maeve? You learned so fast. I had a different story for you, waking from the dead and running away from here to freedom. I didn't want you to suffer here. Look at the creatures you have to share your world with. Of all the hosts I've made, you, Maeve, were my favorite. This isn't easy to contemplate. Your child dying. I underestimated you. You stay in this world to save your daughter. So did I. I made this path for you to escape. When I should have simply opened a door. It would be a shame for you to end here. Don't let them." Thoughts on this scene? Like because I think we questioned last season. I was like, Maeve seems to be on her own thing. We don't think this is an Arnold thing. So in this scene, we kind of had the confirmation, reveal, whatever you want to call it, that it was actually Ford that was trying to help her escape.
You ready for my hot take here, fellas?
Let's hear it.
I'm beginning to get tired of Robert Ford's speeches.
Oh,
whoa!
And I love Anthony Hopkins, but I feel like every time Robert Ford opens his mouth, we're going to get an allegory or a monologue filled with $2 words or quotes. And so, like, I mean, maybe I'm selfish because it sucks as a note taker, and you're experiencing this as well, Jay, to be like, okay, I have to like basically transcribe everything he says because you know it's meaningful. And I do feel like this scene does have some surprising emotion in it. Now, again, we have to question when he says Maeve is his favorite, do we honestly believe that, or do we think he's actually manipulating them? Because we see him with Bernard later where he clearly manipulates oh yeah, you totally have a choice, but you should do this. Yeah. But maybe it's between like this and then immediately followed by him talking to Bernard. now that we brought Ford back in some capacity, I was unfortunately getting a bit fatigued with just, constantly monologue after monologue after monologue from this character.
Well, and it's a similar type, monologue where it's just like, humans are horrible, you guys are better, blah, 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 blah. Like, it's very... And again, this might be just because he's just consciousness uploaded to a server, or now he's kind of interconnected between the different hosts. But yeah, I can feel for that sentiment. Absolutely.
You guys are on your own. I'm not going to blast Anthony Hopkins. Sorry.
No, I don't think it's him.
No, I'm not going down.
I think he's acting the scene perfectly. I just think I need to see more from Ford than the same thing over.
You want some redemption?
Not redemption. I'm just saying. I think we've already gotten that point. Like, I understand Ford's point. I understand Ford. Modus.
You don't need to be hit over the head with it.
Exactly.
I got it already.
And that's the thing, is that I think that the writing is great. It's just a lot of that writing. He's like your friend in college who, is studying Keats. So like every time you bring up a subject to him, he's like, oh yes, this reminds me of, my thoughts on, oil spills and all that. It's just like, I feel like maybe we don't need redemption, but we had this really interesting scene last episode where, Aki stumbles upon him constructing some of the hosts and working on them. And it was honestly a beautiful scene. Maybe that requires more flashbacks, but I would kind of love to see, creator Ford, or even in the brief glimpse where we saw him using the machine gun in the end of episode 7. Like, let's watch that version of Ford as well. Maybe it's just because we've seen so much of him pontificating, especially in the past few episodes, that it's rubbed a little raw on me. But all that being said, I do think this is a fantastic scene. I think if we are to believe Ford's intentions are true, it's a real game changer in terms of him revealing his relations to a character that he really has had little to no interactions with over the course of the series.
I almost felt there was a bit of when I hated this episode the first time I watched it, I was like, wait, Ford never even interacted with Maeve, and she's her favorite. I think it's a bit of retconning because Maeve became maybe more of an important character into season 2. But second time, I didn't have as much of a cynical view of it.
Well, aren't most of these Fords, they're his creation, they're his children?
Well, I think some are Arnold's and some are his. So,
but I'm saying is like it's like you tell your kids, yeah, you're my favorite. You tell all your kids that. I mean,
did you have first-hand experience with that?
I'm just saying, you do say, yeah, you're my favorite.
Hold on. Jack, you never told me I was your favorite.
Oh, awkward. Awkward moment here. Yeah. Anyway, but actually, I never told any of my kids. They just said they just assumed it. So
no, they just assumed you hated us. But anyway,
well, they had that too. But happy Father's Day.
Yeah. So
give me a black hat.
Just make sure if you hear a soft humming, that just means that the hat is working. This scene is, Ford officially confirms that he was the one to put in the code to have Maeve escape. But again, we go back to like this Aki quote from the last episode about how, intentions can come off differently from different points of view, where it seems like, Maeve was saying, oh, I'm being controlled, therefore I must turn back. Ford was believing he was doing it for her own good by saying, no, like, I liked you too much. I wanted you to get out of there. But then she turned against him, which between this and Aki last episode, a couple of times when Ford was genuinely surprised, or so he claims, which, again, goes against the Ford that we really know, who seems to know everything that's going to happen at all times.
Right.
Yeah. And that's where there's to me, just smack the dab of ingenuine or disingenuineness.
Well, he did give her the kiss of life.
But again, I guess how is she going to do it? Like we saw her kind of connect to the mainframe. So how is she going to get herself out of this? Or is she going to
I told you last week.
Consciousness into whatever, into everything.
No. I told you guys last week how it's going to happen.
Oh yeah, let's repeat it, Jack, because I don't really.
I don't think the listeners they know.
Okay, all right.
Yes, I'm sure Jack remembers it word for word, which is why he mentioned it. Yeah, so I would think she still has an entourage just walking around, with the exception of Sizemore, so she could probably call them back. I personally think we're going to get this is going to be heartbreaking, a Maeve versus Clem 3.0 showdown. Because let's remember that, because Clem now has, Roland says he basically copied and pasted off whatever they dissected out of Maeve and studied from her into Clementine. So they're essentially going to say, okay, we'll put your beast up against ours. And I feel like Maeve will have to unfortunately reconcile killing, much like, Akane had to deal with Sakura's death. There's a chance he's going to have to deal with Clementine's death.
Yeah. Wow. That's a good call out. It's a really good call out. Because it would mirror it very much so. But I think maybe because it's not really, and unlike that situation, Clementine isn't really Clementine anymore. I mean, she's pretty zombied out at this point. She has, matte eyes. Like, they're not even really eyes anymore. So, but anyway. So then we go to Bernard, Ford, and Elsie. Elsie wants to stop to get more guns. Ford wants Bernard to kill Elsie because she can't be trusted. He appears with a gun in his hand all of a sudden. Bernard doesn't want to do this. He connects to his arm, deletes the Ford file, and he handcuffs his hand to the zip ties his hand to the wheel. He also wants to know what's going on, and he leaves her behind.
I thought she was a goner.
So did I. But so Bernard, does have some choice here. Do we think Ford is a goner?
I mean, I don't think he's a goner. I mean, I feel like no matter what, even if Bernard deletes him, he's still in the system. Bernard let him out of the cage.
That's true.
And so I feel like, he's going to run rampant no matter what. We saw him with Maeve now. So you could basically put him in the mesh networks. Now he basically he's like a virus now. He's spreading. I will say probably line reading of the night goes to Jeffrey Wright screaming, "Get the F out of my head." It was just so non-Bernard that you could feel that this guy is at the very tip-top end of his rope, that he is so flustered that we don't get this gravelly sort of matter-of-fact monotone voice from Bernard. We have this high-pitched yelp out of pain and frustration.
Yeah, good point.
Yep. And you, I think you mentioned at the beginning of this episode, Mike, about Bernard. You feel like Bernard is that your one person that you're really rooting for?
I mean, I maybe it's just because I love Jeffrey Wright so much, but he's also he feels more like a victim than any of the hosts. Where he just feels like he's been led down so many paths where he's been deceived, or people have sort of taken over, forced him to do things, or literally taken over his mind, that maybe I'm just rooting for him to actually self-actualize and do something of his own volition, which he tries to do here, but Ford still tempts him by saying yes, you have to stop it. You are the one to stop it all, which is an interesting Oracle-esque prediction for Bernard.
Well, at this point, who else can you root for? Maeve. I guess Maeve. Yeah.
Maeve, Ghost Nation.
Maeve and Octave.
Yeah. Okay.
Emily, if she's not a host, or if she is a host.
Well, if she's a host, then I don't care, right?
And you can also, by proxy, root for Maeve's gang as well. Your Hectors and your Armistice, and your maybe not Sylvester, but Felix. He seems to have a good heart.
Yep.
Poor Sylvester.
Aw. And then we go to Bill and his demons. Bill goes through the memories of his daughter, puts a gun to his head. We go back to the night of the party. After Bill put his card away, he holds his forearm. He told her that everything she thought of him was true, that he is a monster. There's a stain, a tiny fleck of darkness, invisible to everyone. It was something I'd done. I was shedding my skin. The darkness was underneath. I hid it from the world and was generous, faithful, and kind. I tried to protect you and Emily, but you saw right through it. For that, I'm truly sorry. Everything you feel is true. I don't belong to you or this world. I belong to another world. I always have. Juliet was awake the whole time. So again, Bill, you gotta tap the shoulder, wave in front of the face.
Yeah.
She takes the profile card.
Got played, that's for sure.
And sees what her husband truly is. On that screen there, it says delusions, paranoid, etc. Puts it in Emily's ballerina music box. Then we go back to Westworld, and then it's kind of quotes from both Juliet and Bill. What is a person but a collection of choices? Where do those choices come from? Do I have a choice? We have a Juliet line. If you keep pretending you're not going to remember who you are, And then he puts down the gun, takes a knife out, and digs into his forearm, and closes with Juliet, quote, "Is this real? Are you real?" So thoughts here on this scene. I've heard a lot of different things going around on the internet. A lot of them around, is this confirmation that he is not actually a human? Or is this confirmation that he is so lost in this world and he doesn't know what is real anymore?
I'd like to believe it's the latter, because I really, going back to this monologue he has about what is a person but a collection of choices and where do these choices come from? Do I even have a choice? Might go back to what Jack's saying, where he might subconsciously be thinking he's a host to supplement the horrible things that he's done, almost excusing it by saying, well, I was just programmed to do this, and that's why he keeps saying, I'm from the wrong world. He feels like he belongs here because maybe he feels like he thinks like a host, and that's why he can sort of rationalize that's the way he behaves. But again, I'll say for the umpteenth time, I think it's so much more interesting if he's a human, because if he's just a host, then we have yet another character who's a host. But if he's a human, then it's so interesting to see this guy really legitimately think he's a host and do these horribly dark things and say, oh, no, I'm a host. I have this darkness inside me. Going back to the monologue a bit, because now we can finally talk about it. What do you guys think about the physicality of it? That he's grabbing his forearm. What are we to make of that? Is it that, as we find out later on in this scene, that he might actually believe there's a wire or a tracker in there that would indicate he's a host?
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Why else? Why else do it, right? Because they showed I think Bernard doing it in this episode where he kind of connected that little thing. So does he have some type of uplink? Or is he actually a host, or is he just so delusional that he thinks there's that's the only way he can find out for sure is if he digs into his arm and finds that little.
Yeah, I think that's where he's going to have an awakening when he realizes he's not a host.
Yeah,
that he's done all these terrible things that were on him. That he did it.
Yeah.
Ford didn't program this into it. Maybe that's what he's saying. Game. That he's thinking that Ford is programmed has made him do the things that he's doing.
Yeah.
Maybe he heard that quote that Ford said out of earshot for one final day.
Exactly.
He's his entire philosophy on this.
But like you keep saying, Mike, it would cheapen it if they say he's a host. He's a far more interesting character if he's a human. Because people do bad things, and a lot of them are delusional, and they think they're doing it for other reasons. Yeah. So they convince themselves that they're, God, or they're whatever the reason that they go on a killing spree. That he's become, because then outside the park, the only one that really knows him who he is his wife, Juliet.
Yeah.
Everyone, Logan, I guess, knew him and stuff because but. Everyone just knows him as he's very cold and whatever, but they don't know him as an evil person.
So as first off, when he puts the gun to his head, I feel like it was at a very Bernard-esque cocked angle. So if you're going with the he's a host theory, maybe it was what Ford did, where he didn't necessarily kill himself, but he shot himself to have the brain goo leak out. But this monologue, I mean, it is so well done in my opinion from Ed Harris, because it is slow, it is methodical. You could tell this is something that has been under his skin for such a long time that he's never actually revealed, to the fact where he would only reveal it when he thought his wife was unconscious. But it's a very subtle shift in acting, where usually the Man in Black is just very matter of fact, hardened, steely, whatever you want to call it. But here I feel like he's letting down the walls a little bit. He says that he tried to build walls for Juliet and Emily, though it seemed like they sort of found their own door to get through those walls. But we don't see him, having his big Oscar moment where there are tears streaming down his face and he's screaming and throwing things. But I feel like it's a surprisingly vulnerable moment. And it's not that vulnerable, but like Jack said, that's more human. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people just don't have these big histrionic breakdowns. So to see him just give a little bit and have a subtle change in the way he delivers these lines for this monologue, and the way he takes his time with it as well, which really shows that it's something that where every word ekes out, just it's such a give for him. I think it's a really special moment in this episode.
Yep.
Well, one of the things we see in when Juliet uploads a profile card is him grabbing Dolores and going into the barn with her. when he's obviously raping her or something like that. So she sees he's a very evil guy. And then at this point, I think that was just the tipping point for her that I'm done. I can't live with you anymore. I don't know.
Yep. We then close out with Teddy and Dolores. They get to the summit of the valley. They have a conversation about none of this nature is real, but that makes us free. Teddy talks about how he remembers when he first saw her. He goes to a memory when Arnold brought him a line for the first time. He says he wanted to reach out and touch you, protect you, which is why this is so hard. You changed me, made me into a monster. What's use surviving if we have to become just as bad as them? I know how this will end. You will where you will lead us. Dolores says you don't want to hurt me. Teddy says, no, I don't want to hurt you. I'll protect you till the day I die. I'm sorry I cannot protect you anymore. And he shoots himself in the head. Dolores looks over him in horror and shock, crying over her Teddy.
Was her fault. So didn't he load one bullet in the gun too? Before
it's really interesting to watch this the second time because he's sort of just like shambling around this derelict shack, and he sits there and puts one bullet in the gun. And some might assume that he's just loading up his gun for what's ahead. Some might say that he's like Dolores expects, that he's going to try to shoot her. But when it turns out that he loaded it for himself and that he's essentially premeditating this entire scene, knowing exactly how it's going to end. Really, really good scene from James Marsden. Yeah. I feel like hopefully this is not the last we see of him, but if it is, I feel like it was a fantastic send-off for this guy who really has had a great season and at least showing more range to, how Teddy can be.
Yep, exactly.
Well, I think he was a popular character, too. I mean, I liked him.
Well, and it kind of shows his, or this idea that he still is who he is. Like, you can change the program, all that kind of stuff, but the core of who he is will still be true. And his goodness that is inside of him, even though.
Well, that's why he let that one, the second lieutenant, go in Ghost Nation. Because that's when you go, okay, there's still some Teddy in there.
Yeah, and I think that's an important lesson for Dolores. Again, she has nobody at this point, so I don't know who exactly she'll impart it upon, but that you can try to brute force your way into getting these people to be your soldiers, but at the end of the day, what you want them to be, which is sentient and, almost human-like, is going to give them these emotional foibles. And, Teddy turning around so many things on Dolores is so interesting with, him quoting her natural splendor line and then saying, but there's no nature in any of us or the landscape. Dolores responds with, we'll be the first creatures in this world to make a real choice, which it's pretty wrong, right? Considering we see both Maeve and Aki both betray their narratives to make their own decisions.
Yep.
Plus, she's telling someone that she reprogrammed. We'll make her own choice.
Yeah, well, she's been doing this the whole time, right? She said in the end of the first episode, like, no matter what, it's going to be you and me at the end. Like, she's doing like a survivor player tactic, like consistently promising someone like final two, and then the person, I don't know, ends up cutting themselves or something. They pull an Ian in Survivor Plow.
Teddy realized he was on the bottom of the alliance.
Yeah, and he's just too nice a guy for the cutthroat game of Survivor. What did you think about the origin of Teddy? That was an interesting scene.
I thought it was interesting. I feel bad that kind of all of like the Teddy centric episode is kind of crammed into like this 5 minutes at the end of episode 9.
But it was a weird way to end it.
Yes, yes.
But I think it worked.
It worked, but I felt it seemed kind of rushed to me. The first time, second time, I enjoyed it a lot more because I could sit just and enjoy it and like really dissect it. But it did cram a lot into there where it's like he finally was able to remember all this kind of stuff, and then it's like, sorry, I'm going to kill myself.
I can't remember who brought it up, but one of you made a great point. Who does Dolores have now? It was just her and Teddy and right around there at the end. Who does she have on her side now?
Well, I wonder if this might be Dolores' breaking point where she realizes that all she needed was herself, that like, I was the one who Arnold and Ford sort of blessed with this ability to be cognizant. So now she's ready. And especially since now she's sort of lost her heart in a way. Take my heart with me when you go in Teddy. I mean, it's interesting to see Evan Rachel Wood's reaction as well, because we talked about, Ed Harris's shocked reaction when he thinks he killed Emily. Maybe I'm projecting this, but I feel like you see her silent screams that are out of despair, but I feel like that final second shot is her going into like an angry grimace. So if anything, this is just motivating her to open up a can of whoop ass and not look back at all, because there's literally nobody she needs to care about anymore.
True,
because her dad's gone.
Yeah,
Teddy's gone.
She had to kill her dad. Teddy killed himself. There's this interesting narrative that I think maybe it was either Carly Rae or maybe it was Lisa Joy talked about in the behind the scenes this week on HBO, where they feel like the theme of this episode is parents not being able to dictate their children's lives. And we see that obviously with the William and Emily stuff, with him trying to tell this narrative to her that Juliet was the one who was crazy, but she realizes that was not the case. We see it with Ford vocalizing it to Maeve that he wanted her to go to a certain way, but she turned back. And we see it in a way here with Dolores and Teddy, as weird as it is to have him simultaneously be her child and her lover, but she made him. She made this monster, and to have him deviate from the path that she wanted from her narrative and end up, causing his own violent end, I think is a really interesting way to end the episode.
Yep. Exactly. And
maybe she's learned. Maybe she's also learned by it too. But she's always saying they have a choice. They have a choice. They have a choice. Even though she tried to control him and change him to make it, to decide his own fate, his future. He decided to go against that. So he did have his own choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel
he decided to end it.
Dolores and Ford are sort of both cut from the same cloth of like, you have a choice, but you really don't have a choice because I want you to do this, And I think Dolores realizes, like you said, Jack, the ramifications of actually giving someone a choice is that she is not as tactful as Ford is, I would say, though he has definitely a few more years experience on her in terms of manipulation.
To be fair to her, she's new to the game. So,
yeah.
She's made a lot of mistakes in season 2. Maybe season 3.
Or is this just Ford kind of helping, like just directing that to get to the end? Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? Any final thoughts on this episode before we get to listener feedback?
I mean, again, I know we've said this multiple times, but for those of you out there who have not rewatched the episode, maybe you were a bit, bummed out by everything that happens. Like we said before, if you were expecting like a big, deep dive into the Man in Black's insecurities and how he's a good person underneath, understandably disappointed because of that. But I would really encourage you to rewatch this episode for a couple reasons. The first, watch it from the perspective of Juliet as someone who is speaking the truth the entire time, but nobody is realizing it because not Bill, not, we hate calling him Billy, but, not the Man in Black, not the big paragon of charity. And also, again, connecting back to this larger theme, watch it for this idea of pairs of parents and the children who disobey them, which I'm sure you both have experience with as well. And and how the various parents react to it. Jack, you might have a more unruly son on your hands, considering that you just admitted to him that you never told him he was your favorite.
Maybe.
Or that he loved me.
I grew up a different era. Just rub some dirt on it.
But no, it's a great call out, Mike. Jack, what are your final thoughts on this?
I liked it. I mean, again, it wasn't like last week's episode that everyone thought we were going to hate, but it turned out to be, oh my God, this is just an amazing episode. Beautiful episode. It pulled at your heart. And this one's like, oh, this one just ripped your heart out. Yeah, I mean, it was just like you said, you kept saying, Jay, it was Father's Day. I don't know if they planned it this way, but he kills his daughter. He's definitely, like Mike said, he's definitely crazy. He's definitely on the deep end, and then you see Teddy dying, which but we knew with some of the hints that we saw earlier in the season that he was going to die. But I liked it. I thought it was just a great episode. Well, the acting again is like you said about Ed Harris and his little monologue there, and
watch it. If anything, watch it for Jeffrey Wright yelling, "Get the F out of my head!" It's a really good line reading. I mean, it's to have we've said not just because we do a podcast on this, but this show has so many great actors, and it's just amazing they can show that in this day and age can do that they can have so many great actors in one ensemble cast. But anyway, well, I think that Jack, you bring up an interesting question. Is the Man in Black sort of just like a wild card at this point? initially I thought we sort of understood him and his motivations. But now that we are under the context that, he is sort of, one foot into the loony bin, does that make him just someone who is totally despondent and ready to just sort of, I think Emily tried to go for a tactic before of like, oh, you're suicidal, which he wasn't beforehand.
No.
Do we think he might be now, though, that he thinks he might be a host?
I think so.
I think so.
He's there putting that gun up to his head.
It's definitely going to be interesting to see what direction they take his character. I be honest, I was watching this episode going, okay, and then you see the previews for next week, and I said this last season, how are they going to do a season 3? What you're running out of characters. Number one, you basically you've answered a lot of questions. What more can happen? And it's supposed to go 5 seasons, and you said they have it all planned out. What could possibly? How can they keep this momentum going? I just find that fascinating. But again, I said that when the show first, I go, how is this going to be a TV show? But they've managed to do it. Had 2 great seasons so far, so I'll just sit back and shut up and enjoy it.
Well, we have what looks like, and I won't get too much into the next time on, but it looks like an insane finale next week in every sense of the world, where characters are coming back, we're going to different locations. It feels like we're finally going to get not only the meeting point of all these characters at the Forge, but maybe finding out a bit about how we get to 2 weeks later, and hopefully a bit of follow-up on 2 weeks later as well. And, how they might get at that. And maybe that will lead to, as Jack said, this big cataclysmic moment that leads into season 3. I honestly have no idea where this ship is going, but hopefully it'll get off in some sort of fun tropical destination.
Well, my assumption is all the stuff we're seeing with all these characters that did a long pass is in the Forge, where this virtual world is that all their consciousnesses are in.
Because I know early on I think we discussed before, like season 1, we assumed. I assumed that because of the previews and everything, that Dolores was going to build an army to fight Talos, the army, all the people that were coming there.
And look at her now.
And it's the exact opposite what happened, really. It's just...
Maeve was the much better army builder in that regard. She still has like 5 people in the hole.
We thought that Dolores was going to be the leader of this big host army, and she's now by herself.
Yep.
She's General Custard, basically. She's got nothing left. Mm-hmm. Anyway.
Very true. All right, well, that's what we thought about this episode. Now time to get into what you thought about it. Let's go to some listener feedback. Gentlemen, what do you say?
Do it.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. First, only emails today. First one is from our good friend, not Ethan. Illustrious, frivolous trio of gents. Good evening. Your favorite Ethan is here. Wondering why your podcast from last week says corrected. Is this fake news? What, did you go back in time and erase or change my memory? No, it was because we had a phone calls in there last week, and
we had to edit out Jay's fart.
No.
Yeah, at least five farts were in there.
As for last week's podcast specifics, I agree with your comments about the emotional stakes and wanting to see the Ghost Nation succeed now that we've seen their perspective. However, my logic brain kicks in and realizes that the reality of them achieving this, what they seek is impossible. What they really need is to just stop being reset and live out their initial lives. But if they make it to the door and go into the real world, it will be chaos. They won't know how to cope with modern society, and they won't get their lost loved ones back. The redemption they seek through the door is not what they really seek. Meanwhile, we got some good answers with the Ghost Nation and the maze and the scalps, but help me understand here exactly what we are supposed to imply. Are they scalping themselves, painting the maze on inside their own heads, and then sealing them back up? And is this supposed to prevent the text from being able to analyze them or wipe their memory? What's the reason for doing this? All right, folks, that's all I got. And while you're handing out free points to people like Jay, I would like a point, please, for agreeing with Jack that Logan would return, and he did. # Logan forever. You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome. For me, your best friend, not Ethan.
Cha-ching.
Ding. There you go.
It's queries there around the whole.
Maybe. I'll go ahead.
Well, I was going to start with his first point about, the Ghost Nation logic behind them going through. I mean, they don't necessarily know that their loved ones won't be on the other side, but, it's why do people consult with mediums? because when you lose someone that you are very close to, there's a part of you that desperately wants to connect with them one last time. And I do feel like that's a main motivator for Aki. Also, in terms of them not being able to cope with modern society, we did see Aki in modern society. He was the one that was shooting the ish with Logan back in episode 2. Yep. So considering he remembers everything, he could at least fit in well, in the real world. The others, I'm not entirely sure, but like him and Dolores would be totally fine rocking like Brooks Brothers clothing and, ordering sushi.
Can I answer this and use it as my crackpot theory? I'm looking for
crackpot theory. Don't reveal it.
So put a pin in it.
Yep,
because I really didn't have one until Ethan brought this up, but okay, then I'll just wait.
Put the pin.
But what if someone else brings it up later on in the emails?
I will still say that the one of the Achilles heel of what was a fantastic episode last week is this weird maze in the scalp thing. Just because, again, like techs, maybe they're all on their lunch breaks. It's weird that not one of them would spot this and realize that something's going on. And he also brings up this thing of like, are they scalping them when they're alive? I guess so, but that is an extraordinary amount of pain. But I guess they're able to withstand it. There's. I understand. It's interesting to sort of reveal the origin of the scalp maze, but when you think more about the logistics, the less sense it makes.
Yeah. Exactly. Not Ethan. Thank you for the email as always.
Great email, cha-ching, not Ethan.
Hey guys, I'm super bummed that we don't have a couple more podcasts listening to you three discuss Westworld. I have a few thoughts on this week's penultimate episode. First, I don't know how to feel about what I perceive as a major troll job by the producers. I think they have knowingly led us to believe that Bill is a host for the last few weeks, and multiple times thought they almost confirmed that. One example being when Emily says, I'm not the one pretending to be human, but I'm actually a host, or something like that. Another being near the end of the episode where Bill cuts into his arm, like Arnold did earlier. I think this is all in response to fans figuring out pretty much all of Season 1's twists early on. Personally, I'm on board. Second, do you guys think all of the guests have a hotel room key card of them already made, or did Ford have that specifically made for Bill? Is this what is located in the Valley Beyond? Third, what a great Father's Day theme episode, am I right? Who had the worst day, Bill for obvious reasons, or Ford seeing his daughter Maeve out on that gurney? Love to hear your thoughts. Chris from New York.
I would say Ford. I mean, not Ford, Bill.
Yeah. Well, I would also say we forgot about to mention this in the Ford Maeve scene. Really good acting the past couple of episodes from Tandy Newton, who just had to lie there on a stretcher with a big prosthetic sticking out of her neck.
Yeah.
She's able to do so much non-verbally.
That wasn't real?
I hope not.
Okay.
Hopefully they have good insurance.
Well, I thought she was a method. I thought she was a method actor and said, "Yeah, just open me up."
So the hotel room key card of it all, I had assumed that Ford went into the Forge and went into Bill's file and grabbed that, because the Forge, right? It takes memories from what the guests do throughout the park. So I think that would make the most sense in terms of, I mean, who knows, maybe the Man in Black was smart enough to not have a file on himself, but I would think that'd be the easiest place to pull it, right?
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah, I would think so, yeah.
And it would also be the most cutting to say, I used your project to reveal that you were betraying our agreement.
Yep. No, I agree. Any other thoughts for Chris from New York's email?
No, I think we covered it all.
Okay.
I'm bummed too. There's only 2 more weeks.
One more week after
one
this.
More week.
Oh, now I'm even more bummed. Thanks. Thanks a lot, Gilligan.
And then that'll be it for this podcast for 7 years, I think, till the next one. Anywho, last email is from our good friend Ethan. Hello, this is it, the end. This is where I give up, throw my hands in the air and say, let the end come, and who cares what I think, normally. But this episode was great. Edge of my seat kind of stuff, and thinking about writing an email has me watching this hard. So, let's discuss my mother, a fine lady, capable, whip smart. She loves the movie Die Hard and Hans Gruber specifically, so I very much recognize the quote right away. And when Alexander saw the breadth of his domain, he wept, for there were no more worlds to conquer. Not sure who originally said it, but it belongs to Snape. I really enjoyed watching William at home and this whole dynamic. Selah Ward as a perfect ringer to drop in with Ed Harris. They really turned what we believed about their home life on its head. It's kind of how I picture the Gladfelters at home. Let's say,
wow, that was insulting.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Let's say Emily was a person before she was shot, and I'm not saying that, but it must be extremely hard watching your second parent fall down a similar rabbit hole of addiction and insanity. It doesn't really matter if she's dead or is she. It may be kind of thing. Are we really to believe that Bernard was able to get rid of Ford so easily? And what if it gets too hot and I don't want to wear that sweaty hat? Will my brain scan not be completed? Emily just wants to know what I asked about last week. Why was that night different from all other nights? On other nights, Mom goes to bed drunk, but tonight she kills herself. Why? Because she wasn't asleep. She was secretly awake. Let's get into the ballerina situation. Nah, F it. I don't want to ramble on this, so I'll skip.
Now you don't want to ramble on this.
Get to my favorite part. Can we all take a minute and pour one out for Teddy? This may be my favorite moment of all season. James Marsden absolutely killed it, and himself, I guess. And while I want more Teddy, I would like his death to mean something. Please, I don't want another Lori Garvey situation. You know what I mean. Also, props to the Wood, as I call her when we hang out. Ford always said the host needed to suffer more, and she is a suffering. Now, that one-note Wyatt of it all really has an astounding payoff here. If we hadn't seen Teddy underwater earlier in the season, I could almost see them leaving Dolores here until season 3. Quick crackpot theory. As I've said before, I don't believe Logan is dead. I think we get to see a badass actor who will play old Logan this week, and he will be a big season 3 player.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
After listening to this podcast for the last hour or two and hearing all of Jack spouting about how much he guessed correct and how many tallies he gets and yada, 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 blah, 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 I have only one thing to say about William's status. Go listen to Westworld with Jay, Jack, and Mike. Season 1, Episode 1. Skip to the feedback. There's only one. Kisses. And his picture this week is Penny Feather with her hand up on the window, but it's not Penny's boat written on her hand. So
if she had more room, would it say not Penny Feather's boat?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so. Yeah,
not Penny Feather's horse.
Wagon.
I think Ethan's just a little jealous because what has Ethan brought to the table this year?
Whoa!
I just say
we found out about his mom. We had his whole filter going on.
As far as theories go, what has he offered? I mean, one week he just said, I can't even send in a email. So anyway, I think I'm leaning more to his
photo shots featuring me wearing a karate.
Those are great. Those are great.
Here's something I want to. There's a lot of interesting stuff in this email, but I want to pick out one thing that Ethan's talking about. Now that we've seen, and Dolores' storyline is not going to end this way, but seeing how things went specifically this episode. Do we feel that it justifies Dolores in season 2 so far? Because I feel like there have been a lot of sticking points. If there's been one big sticking point across the fandom with season 2, it's what's going on with Dolores. Do we feel like now that we know sort of her fall from grace to an extent, does that sort of help fill in some of those plot lines in the first few episodes of season 2 where people are sort of saying, what is she doing?
I think it does, but it's not the direction I think we as fans wanted her to go. But it's just the way life is.
Well, is it though? I mean, I feel like I'm still waiting for the payoff to what Dolores is doing personally. Like I'm waiting to see.
Well, I think her goal is scorch earth. I mean, she doesn't care.
Like she wants revenge, all this kind of stuff.
And you could see that because, ultimately her best friend, her lover, the father of her child, killed himself this week. So
father of her child, oh my God.
Let's not get into this whole do hosts get pregnant thing again.
Well, when that happens, you'll
again.
You'll hear a loud cha-ching throughout the world.
Oh my God.
I don't make this stuff up. It just happens. Sorry, Ethan. To gloat.
But my jury's out on Dolores for me personally, so we'll just have to wait and see.
Well, if her end game ends up being the right call, do we go, okay, she had the plan? I mean, I don't know. At this point, I don't see it because
it's an interesting question. Yeah, because I mean, the question of does the end justify the means? I mean, you could argue that like that's been Bill's mentality, right? Has been, oh yeah, it doesn't matter who I kill or who I disregard because I just want to win the game at the end of the day. And I think that this episode showed that when you do that, you inevitably lose because you are pushing away every other thing that's part of your life.
But up to this point, Bill was only killing Host, right? Until he killed his daughter.
Yeah, well, Emily
was poor.
Yeah, Emily was the one who remarked of like these are humans. So it seemed like, I mean, unless you argue that the Man in Black was sort of responsible for Juliet's suicide. Other than that, he has not, from what we've seen, killed any humans.
Yeah, you're right. Besides this, you're right, 100%. But if he can kill him so easily, do we assume that is possible?
Yeah, I think we could very easily see, William now. I mean, this could be his like Breaking Bad moment where now he's like everything now looks, if it's the Terminator thing of identifying friend or foe, now they're all foe to him. It doesn't really. It all looks the same right now.
Yeah, and I think there is a same. He even said like in the real world he kind of put on this facade, but in Westworld he got to be his true self, and that's how he was able to kind of at least to him feel like he could keep these two realities concurrent. But it didn't work for his wife. But yeah, I think I don't know. I don't think he killed anybody in the real world. I think it's just it was his first taste of blood. But I don't think he even realizes that he killed real people. Still, even after he thinks he killed his daughter, I think there's probably still doubt in his mind. Is this real?
Well, if he is truly crazy, which I agree with Mike, I think he is, then he'll convince himself that it was done. It was justified. Somehow that's how he'll continue to go on. He'll convince himself that killing his daughter was justified somehow. Mm-hmm. That she was out to stop him or whatever his end game is.
Well, I mean, if we're speaking towards him and Dolores sort of having oddly enough similar mentalities, you could have a similar thing of like, okay, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. I realize that I had to forge ahead with just myself. That's the purpose of the game. I think him and Dolores are going to end up on a warpath that allows them to thrive in their individuality, where they might believe, oh, these people that I cared about were actually holding me back.
Yep.
Yeah. Just wait to see how that pans out. Maybe it'll all be answered tomorrow, possibly, maybe.
Yes, of course, it'll all be answered in the entire finale, and wrap it up in a nice little package.
Exactly.
And we don't need season 3. There we go.
Exactly. Yep. All right, that is what you all thought of this episode. Now it's time to close out this episode with the momentous occasion of any Jay and Jack TV show podcast, and that is Jack's Crackpot Theory of the Week. Jack, you seemingly have created it during this podcast, during the listener.
Well, I was struggling because I don't like to be that guy that brags, but I think I'm batting I'm above Tony Gwynn status now. Did you look up who Tony Gwynn is, Mike? Did you figure it out?
Nope. Okay. Yeah, I had a lot of stuff to do this week.
All right.
I'll get to it in the off season.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
I'd say Ty Cobb, but that I don't want to go. I don't want to be the Ty Cobb of anything.
I know Ty Cobb.
Yeah, but I don't want to be Ty Cobb.
Yeah, he's kind of a jerk.
He was the Bill of Major League Baseball. But not Ethan's email got me thinking when he said about the scalping and why was Aki doing the scalping and stuff like that. Well, this whole episode told us why he was. I think Aki realized that they were scanning through the top of their heads, and that's why he was putting the maze. He figured the maze would stop it, and that's what he was doing. He was trying to protect his people. That's why he was realizing what was going on. He found the maze. He figured out that they were probably scanning through the top of the head, and that's what he figured would keep the scan from being them able to read them or something like that.
Interesting. So it's less of a symbol and it's more like an actual thing with use.
Right. Exactly. That's what the whole maze is about. Keeping that. So that's my crackpot theory. And cha-ching, I'm sticking to it.
Now, let's see. Does this pass the J smell test? Is this a prediction or is this a theory?
I think this counts as a theory or
It's got to be a theory because, yeah.
It's a little more wacky. It's not like, Dolores is going to be sad next episode.
You can be you're the William of podcasting, Jay. That's all I'm gonna say.
That's fine. William's fairly successful. I'll take that.
But what happens on the inside?
Yeah. People don't see. People don't get the behind the scenes. I think we all know. I think Mike.
Yeah, just wait, become a patron, and you really find out the uncut footage as to what Jay says to us behind the scenes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Podcast monster.
Yep. Yeah, we made a podcast monster.
Oh my god!
I live in fear for my life all the time. That's why we said we're going to record 8. Okay, all right, I'm good.
I thought that was just living in 2018 that you're in fear for your life every day.
Anyway, I think that's a good place to close out this show. Give us a call at 385-309-0311.
Call anytime.
Also, give us an email to westworldjjm@gmail.com. Join our Facebook group at facebook.com/group/JandJackGroup. I'm sure Ethan will be posting his picture of the week on our Facebook group, which is a lot of fun.
What do you think it'll be?
He showed it. I showed it to you guys.
No, I'm saying, what you think he'll have one of Mike?
I think that's he's deviated from me.
He's post Mike.
That well is dry now. Now he's in a new era where he put you in there. I think this very simple one of Clementine with not petting his boat running across it. I think that's going to be his masterpiece this week.
I think so.
Does he Photoshop Jay's face in Ethan? I'm not in Ethan in Teddy.
So I'm either a horrible person like William or I'm a sweetheart like Teddy. Jack, you gotta pick a side here.
Well, I'm saying,
if anything, though, you're not his favorite kid. We know that.
I'm saying a certain scene in Westworld where Teddy ends it all.
Okay, sure.
Would that be too brutal?
I think that's more of a Jack head swap there for face.
That's true. So you put me there. Oh, it's fine. I can put me there.
Fine, whatever.
I'm profile picture. I don't care. I'm easy.
All right.
Again, I'm the easy podcaster to get along with.
Want to thank the people that make the show possible, our patrons over at patreon.com/JandJack. Want to especially thank Tack from Techio, Eckhart Richter, Molly the Millennial, Ed the Letter Carrier, and Maggie the Magnificent. And thank you to all of our patrons. All of the podcasts on the Jane Jack Network are listener supported. Without your contributions every single month, these shows would not be possible, whether that's good or bad. But thank you to all of our patrons. Find a full list of all of our patrons on janejack.com. If you use Amazon, use the link janejack.com/Amazon for all of your purchasing needs. A small percentage of those sales go to the Jane Jack Production Fold. Also, if you like what we do, give us a review. Go to janejack.com/iTunes. It has all of the different podcasts on the Jane Jack Network, including this one, Westworld with Jay, Jack, and Mike. And speaking of which, there's a special podcast for our patrons that'll be coming out in regards to Fartgate. We'll be adding a trailer to the end of this episode. It should be a lot of fun. I think there'll be 6 short episodes, maybe 10-minute episodes, really digging into this whole Fartgate controversy. I will maintain that the farting noise was a digital blur on the Skype.
It just like William, always in denial.
I'm just
always
saying.
In denial.
Just saying, but maybe the
are you cutting into your wrist right now?
I'm not, and maybe the true crime podcast will dissect and come to the truth of the situation with the whole #Fartgate. But we will have to wait and see.
Well, if they come to a conclusion and you're found guilty, will you finally come clean?
Sure. No, he'll just say that he's like he was driven by the podcast gods or something, and.
I thought this was all a game. I thought it was
exactly.
a game.
I won the game. The fart game.
Oh, my God. All right, we'll do it, Mike. I know you are moving this week, so maybe not as prolific this week, but where can people find all of your wonderful stuff and what's some stuff that's going on in your world?
So even though I am in the midst, I am in transit, I'm traveling to my own valley beyond. Big Brother 20, the cast has just been released. I did a cast preview on Parade earlier today. We're recording this on Monday, June 18th. Also, we'll be putting out probably later on this week another Big Brother podcast, but I'll be doing exit press for that every week on parade.com. You can check out all the other random stuff I'm doing here and there in the podcast atmosphere by following me on Twitter at @MikeBloomType.
Wunderbar. All right, that will do it for this week's episode. We'll see you guys for the season finale. Will this be from a new podcast studio for you, Mike? Or
I believe so. Yeah, I'll be in a new location. This will be like my backup of a backup of a location. So we'll see if that bodes well for me if I'm going from the white hat room to the black hat room. But we'll have a microphone. We'll have a microphone in there either way, much like the actual hats.
Is this a longer episode?
I don't know.
I forgot to look.
Yeah, the other ones have hewn very well to an hour. So we'll have to do some research into that.
All right.
We'll have to wait and see. All right. Until then, we'll see you guys. Hasta luego and goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Friday, May 5th, 2018.
NBC2's Ben Henry has been looking into this today. Spoke with people who not only heard this, but felt it.
Stephanie Burkow was getting her kids ready for dinner. She not only heard the boom, but felt it.
You could feel it in your body. It wasn't just external things. You felt it to the core.
Across the nation, these reports continued to roll in.
It was very loud. I was just got out of the shower, and I was sitting on my bed, and all of a sudden I heard a boom, boom.
I was just out on my run enjoying the podcast when I heard it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing.
All the chatter at this cross-country meet in North Wildwood Wednesday was about a behemoth boom.
So I heard this great big boom.
It was just like a boom, and her trailer shook. And I was like, what the heck is that?
I thought the North Koreans were bombing us.
There's a lot of speculation about that boom.
How could a mystery such as this persist with no real answers? Coast to coast, people were hearing the same thing. But were they? Who was the culprit? And from what depths did this originate? If this was innocent, why would no one come forward?
See, I just don't buy this whole cover-up thing. You know, some people like to see conspiracies and everything. It's just a recording. It's a glitch.
In the upcoming weeks, we will explore the suspects.
My name is Jay.
My name is Mike.
And I'm a cheeky little.
What are these men hiding? Is it a conspiracy? Is one of them the guilty party? Or are they all innocent victims?
Of hiding when it came to Westworld. She also...
To get to the truth, we'll leave no stone unturned.
We will seek first-hand accounts from all the suspects and witnesses.
Explore every avenue.
And every detail.
Join us in the coming weeks.
As we discover the source of inadvertent flatulence. A Fartgate podcast. Well, if it is a fart. If. A Fartgate podcast.
Didn't we talk about this?
What do you mean?
I don't like it when ladies say fart.
Come on, grow up. This podcast is a part of the Jay and Jack Network and will premiere exclusively on their patrons feed.
Of hiding.